Hello staff professionals, Greg Cesario here, better known as Caesar, coming to you from my little backyard short game area here behind me. Anyway, I hope this finds you doing well, staying healthy, and enjoying the new craziness of non-stop golf at your facilities. And I know many of you are waiting to open your doors to get those golfers back on the golf course. We're waiting to get our doors back open at TaylorMade. While we continue to service our staff professionals better than anybody in the business, we continue to look at cool ways to bring you new content and information that will inspire you, educate you, and also entertain you during these unique times. With that, I want to introduce to you a person that really needs no introduction. He represents our world on the global professional tours, and he's established his own brand for TaylorMade. You know him as Trottie Golf, that Englishman with the beard and the glasses. You can find him on IG or Twitter. In short, he helps look after our best players in the world. Here is an early exclusive peek of some of his best wedge fitting techniques. We want to bring it to you first. Sit back, enjoy, and without further ado, go get him, Trottie.
Hey guys, Chris Trott here from the TaylorMade Tour team, and welcome to Tour Truck Tuesday. This week we are going to talk about a hot topic: bounce on wedges, and how at home in this scenario that we find ourselves in, you can build a picture of what bounce does and how the right bounce might work for your game. We're going to test off a concrete to create a hard surface, last week's mat that we used for iron, loft and lie, and then also a mulched area to try and recreate the bunker shots or any deep rough that we might be in. Stay open-minded. That's the one thing I'm going to ask you when we work through wedges and we work through bounce and you find what's right for you. You must be prepared to experiment. It's something that we see all the time at the Team TaylorMade photo shoots. Players like Rory, John Rahm, Jason Day and Dustin Johnson, they're always experimenting with hand position, with loft, with face angle, and that is something that you must keep in mind before you go straight away to the cookie cutter wedge that you think is going to work in one scenario. The other thing, as you go through last week's iron, loft and lie session, you might want your wedges to play a little bit flatter. Okay, and the reason for that is because a wedge, remember, will be used for chipping, which means the hands will sit somewhat lower than if it's a full swing. So think you could have your lob wedge slightly flatter in terms of the lie angle created between the blade or the leading edge and the shaft versus the rest of the set. Something to consider, and something, if you watch last week's YouTube clip, you can build that portfolio of how you want your wedges to look. Now, the first test where I always start, and it's good if you have your old wedges on hand, because I don't suggest you do this with your brand spanking out the wrapper My High Toe wedge. But if you start with your old wedge, and I've picked again the My High Toe 4-way camber because it's a super versatile camber for me and I love it. Now, what is camber? What is bounce? It's the angle created, and I've got a mark on the leading edge, but from the leading edge to the back edge, it's the degrees that this angle creates. That's bounce. How's it going to help me? Well, when the club goes into the turf, it's going to help it come out. Or when you're pushing this waist area or sand through, it's going to create a pocket to push the sand and get underneath the golf ball. It's critical for success. You can't just play low bounce wedges if you end up using your lob wedge out of a links turf that has the links turf would be hard, but if the sand is heavy, then you want the bounce there in certain areas of the sole to push the sand out. Or, like I say, when you get onto a pitch shot off the fairway, off tight stuff like this, you would want less bounce in certain parts of the club. Again, Rory McIlroy alluded to this in the tour talks that I did with him live last week on the TaylorMade channel. It's building up an understanding of what you need. So the first test that I always like to do is with an old wedge. Let me reiterate that. And I've put a line down here with a golf shaft. That's my ball to target line. But in this illustration, I'm just going to show it you with a neutral hand position. And by that, I don't mean where I'm leaning the leading edge in, which will then reveal the front part. Or I don't mean where I'm wide stance and I'm putting the hands back, which would reveal the flange and the back part of the bounce. I'm just talking, let's get an understanding of what a neutral position is and what a standard chip shot is, and how that first mark, and you can see it here hopefully, is center sole. So I look from this angle first because it's information coming back to you all the time. It's centered, which is good, the lie angle's good. And then it's also centered from front to back as well. So therefore I know out the gate that this piece of bounce here is important for my standard chip shot. Now I like the concrete because it gives you feedback that you can clearly see. But again, not something you want to do on your new wedge. So you can go through that process then by recreating hands forward. Now with this, I want to bring in something that often comes up at photo shoots. And again, you can learn so much when you're around these guys. If you place that in for shaft plane, and just to describe briefly what that is, it's how the club moves in the backswing. This would be above the plane, and then I could work, if this is my ball to target line, work left to hit a fade shot. So think about table tennis or tennis, it would give me a fade. And then if I work under it and inside, I could then work it for a draw shot and get more run. Now the reason I mention that is I want you to be open-minded, because the tour pros always are, and they're looking for their wedges to do so much. So if you set up to a golf shot, again I'll do it face on, and the club goes outside of the path because I want it not to spin as much, I might put my hands level or back and it's that way and it hits a nice higher shot. You can see then, looking at the feedback from the mat, that I've used more of the back part of the wedge. So I've touched the bounce that is here, and I've started to leverage back in this heel area. So now I know that that's going to be required as a contact point for that back open golf shot. Then think about, I play a shot that I want to run. So I'm going to get the head to go inside the plane, okay? And I'm going to run that golf shot. So again, we go back, the hands become forward, the ball goes back, it's an inside runner. And you can then see that the strike points are the front of the blade, just touching the mat now. I've used here and here and here. Different point of contact. Leading edge as we look at it, how does that look? Okay. How's the bounce look up here? Okay. You can get into the chamfering of that if you want to. Did you like the feel of the interaction? The other area to look at before we move away from this is, when do I use this part? Well, you use it when the shaft becomes vertical. Perhaps when you're getting in a very tricky lie, you can actually see as we get down to the wedge that this part then will come in. So it's no point in shaving away that, which we sometimes have with something like a classic C grind. You can see that the relief is here. So again, be open-minded to C grinds. Be open-minded to knowing what you require from that wedge. But the final test point that I always like to do, and again, last week we used a Sharpie to highlight the grooves. Now I want you to cover the flange, get that fresh ink on there, and start to think about, get the back edge. A lot of tour players take away the back edge. Why do they do that? We'll start to see when you cover this, what areas do I use when it comes to a bunker shot, when it comes to a lob shot. Put fresh ink on there, move yourself into more of a bunker sand environment, set yourself up, get lower. Now you're putting the flange down into it, and really think about just a nice flop shot, and you can see straight away that now you're leveraging where the ink has been pushed away, the back parts of that bounce. So straight away, the worst thing that you can do once you get this feedback is to go straight to a grind wheel and perhaps create that heel relief. Maybe, and you can see I've used it a lot there, maybe I need that heel for certain shots. Different bouncers are brilliant. There are loads of different options. They give you different feels. If you're a steep guy into the golf ball or girl, the bounce is going to help the club come out of the turf. If you play a lot of chip shots with your hands forward, you're going to need bounce to help that club come through. If you play a lot of shots with your hands back, vice versa, you're going to need to be aware of what's on there. But create a picture with the information that's available to all of us in this environment. Create a picture of what you need and what areas you need before you go back to create your My High Toe or buy your next Mill Grind 2 wedge. Create what works for you, build the picture and use the information. High bounce wedges, like I say, are great if you're in areas that are perhaps more rugged like this and you need the bounce to get through the thick grass. But when you get onto the hard pan, you will need lower bounce stuff. So think about where you need it, think about where you play, build the portfolio, obviously test them out and work with your fitter, but take responsibility. I like to think that that's a big message that's coming out of here. It's not all on the fitter. Some of it is on you as a player to make the call. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully you can build a picture in your mind of what wedges might work for you. If you like this information, subscribe and follow, comment below. I'll happily answer any of them. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully this information's helping you get more golf ready for when we can get back out there and all play some golf. Be safe. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers, guys.